Good evening and welcome to another edition of Filmnut. I am your host, Jeff Schubert. Glad you can join us. Well, the Museum of Broadcast Communication describes a dramedy as a television show that fuses elements of comedy and drama. The USA Network show, In Plain Sight, accomplishes this in a way where the humor is fresh, organic, and from the characters and doesn't get in the way of the drama or the plot. With us tonight to talk about the show is its creator, writer, and executive producer, David Maples. David, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Looking forward to talking about your show.
I'm really casual. I didn't know I was going to get shot from like the whole thing. I thought it was going to be waist up. So this is a rare treat. Audiences almost never get to see.
We want to know the real you here at Filmnut.
Soak it up while you can, America.
Well, this is internet television. We try to be different, and certainly I would have worn my Laker jersey had I known.
Yeah, this is the Celtics. Well.
No, great franchise. So In Plain Sight, I had an opportunity to catch 4 episodes this week. Each one had me laughing out loud. For viewers who may not have seen it, what is it about, the show?
It's a drama. I don't know why you were laughing. So, for those who haven't seen the show, I have no idea why you've tuned into this, but it's about witness protection. A U.S. Marshal named Mary Shannon. She's a WITSEC inspector. That's what the marshals call the people that are
WITSEC?
Yes, which is not an acronym. It's witness security. Is that an acronym?
Yeah, I think it is.
Oh, okay. The first year they put on the chair W.I.T. and I, had one of my famous tantrums and said, "No, get these off the stage. It's not."
Heard about those.
I didn't.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. So it's about witness protection, and it takes place in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And she and her sort of quasi-partner, they bring people into the program and help them figure out what their new lives are going to be, and settle in and negotiate the myriad hurdles and whatnot that people face when they have to do that.
So people testifying against bad guys get a whole new identity. Everyone saw Goodfellas, that kind of idea.
Yeah, pretty much. That's the gist.
That's the gist. Now I ask you a question. What is the show not about? Do you know what I mean by that?
What is it not about? It is not it's not about a murder every week. It's not about even a crime necessarily every week. It is not about mobsters every week. It's about there's a huge breadth and width of diversity of the kinds of people that come into the program and their families that come in. So it's children and wives or husbands, and people come in for all kinds of reasons. Some are innocent. Some people just happen to be at the wrong place and witnessed something, and just by virtue of the fact that they saw somebody dangerous do something bad, their lives will never be the same, and so they have to go into the program. And a lot of the people that come in are criminals that have made some kind of deal with the government to put away a bigger criminal. The classic case is Sammy the Bull Gravano, who I think he admitted to maybe 18 murders, I think, something like that, and did a little over 3 years in jail before they put him in the middle of America and let him start doing what he did all over again. So
now your lead is played by Mary McCormick, right?
Yeah.
Many may remember her from the Howard Stern film Private Parts.
Mm-hmm.
She does an amazing job. Her character is so funny. Was that how you envisioned it right off the bat, or did her audition? Did she have a take on it that led it down that path?
No, it's.
And how would you describe her character?
Her character is really, really crusty, prickly on the outside. Not somebody who, she holds everybody at arm's length. You've got to earn your way, sort of, into the inner sanctum, if you will. And once you get in, it's a really cool place to be because she's, an amazing woman. But she doesn't suffer fools, and her tendency is to see the fool before she sees the person. But Mary McCormick, the actress, I wrote the part it was a blind script deal, and for those who don't know what a blind script deal is, somebody paid me, said, we're going to give you money, write a script, we don't know what it is. I didn't pitch anything. It was the now defunct UPN network, and the only mandate was that it had a strong female lead. So, and people said, "Oh, well, was this a passion of yours?" And I said, "No, I had no idea. I didn't know anything about witness protection other than I'd seen the movie Blue Skies and Goodfellas." So that was the extent of it. But I kept coming back to it. I made a list of all the different sort of sandboxes I could have this character play in, and I kind of knew who the character was before I even had a show. I knew that I wanted to write, about this woman, and she's kind of an amalgam of people I've known over, over the course of my long life.
I think one line that comes off to my mind is she was angry at someone, and she's like, "You're going to be in like ball striking distance on Friday," or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which brings me ball striking distance to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that your line?
No, actually, it wasn't. It was one of my writers, David Graciano. That was his line. I have to give credit. It was a great line.
But she's passionate. She's serious.
But that's her. That's her in the in the pilot episode. She's trying to get. She's just put her witness Tasha in her apartment, and the cable's not turned on, and she's trying to get. I think the character she's talking to on the phone is Federico. She says, get it turned on by whatever, or we're switching to DirecTV or something. And then she says, "Think it's funny? How about I come over there and punch you in the face and then switch to DirecTV?" So that's sort of her, the way she goes through life. She's a bit of a bull in a china shop.
And I think it's an eclectic group of characters you have, and I think their boss may be kind of like the straight guy, right? The Steve, is it the McQueen character?
Stan McQueen.
Stan McQueen.
He's evolved, over the course of the show. As with most shows, the characters will, sort of find their way into who they are. He started out, he was, I think, much more foppish than he became, and early on we were trying to figure it out, like most shows. And I think about probably the 4th episode was when we really sort of nailed it and said, this is what we are.
I was relieved. The last time I saw him, he was dying in Entourage, so I'm glad he's alive and well.
Yeah, it was hard getting, resuscitating him. He had that heart attack on the green.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah, and Paul Ben Victor is, just an amazing actor.
Absolutely,
that he can play that part. That the most abrasive, vile man on the planet, and then play, this kind of. I didn't want to do the, the tried and true. Network version of the boss in the police station, right. The McLeod, right. Get in here, right. That guy.
Well, that's the thing.
And we started out with him being the opposite of that. We started out with him being, probably too ineffectual, too sort of in awe of Mary. So now I think we found a happy balance of who that guy is.
It's great. I had a script analyst on the show not too long ago, and one of the things we talked about were cliche choices that people make in writing, and outside of the interview, we continued the conversation. I was talking about how that applies to actors too, and sometimes actors make cliche choices as actors.
Sure.
The scene where you're interrogating the witness and blah blah blah, and the intonations from show to show tends to be the same. Your characters just seem to be all fresh and original, yet true to what their jobs are and what they're doing, which is what I really like about it.
Yeah, we make a real concerted effort to do that. There are really very, very few new situations, new relationships, new ideas to write about. Right. So whatever you do, hopefully you strive to come up with a fresh take on it. And we work really, really hard to do that. I think every writer and every actor's initial instinct is the cliche. It's what we know, it's what we've seen before, and when you read the line, the line, whatever the line is, just because art in whatever form is cumulative. We are all building upon that which has come before. Shakespeare built upon that which had come before him. So, we go to great lengths to look at the scene, that's the interrogation, and in the episode that's coming up, rather than go to the episode that's coming up, one that's already aired that are witnesses.
I thought we were getting a spoiler.
No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. But that the audience might be familiar with the A Bridge Too Far episode, which was with Clark Peters, great actor. And there's a scene where, and it's Marshall's witness. It was the first episode we did that was, the A storyline was, it was Marshall's witness that was about. And there's an interrogation scene where he has to find out from this guy where his witness is, and this guy has been complicit, an accomplice in deceiving he and Mary and leading them to away from the witness that they desperately need to find. And so instead of doing the strong arm interrogation, came up with the idea, because Marshall is sort of this odd,
intelligent
insight. He has an encyclopedic knowledge of a lot of odd things, and we never explain why or how. It's just kind of who he is. And in the interrogation, he notices that the guy is wearing a Mason ring, and he starts quoting from, it's the Freemason text is, incredibly diverse. It's not, it is not, the same ritual from one chapter to another. But there are a lot of books that. And he starts talking about, the rough-hewn ashlar of Solomon's temple, and and the guy is, who are you? Who sent you? Where did you come from? And he's saying, I know who you are, and I know, and he gets to him that way. And so we really, really work hard to kind of find those kind of unique Marshallisms or unique Maryisms or unique whoever the character is,
and it pays off.
Hopefully it does. Yeah. I think with anything, if you can't be afraid to fail. You've got to put it out there and do the things that people haven't seen before and done before, as much as you can try to, without becoming bizarre,
right,
or unrelatable or inaccessible.
Well, again, and again, I picked up on all these things within the first few minutes of the first episode that I watched, and one of the things I really like about it is you do it in a way that's still true to the story. So I don't think you go too far with it. But we have some instant messages coming in, so I want to get to some of those.
All right.
Moxie, just wondering on the show, WITSEC is a very secretive agency, so do you have a technical advisor for the show from WITSEC?
Moxie, I like that, Moxie. Got a lot of Moxie.
Moxie has Moxie, that's for sure.
We do have a technical advisor, Moxie. It's a great question. Our technical advisor was the WITSEC, the chief inspector. Forgive me, Charlie, if I'm getting this wrong, but I believe he was the chief inspector in Los Angeles through most of the 80s. So he's a wealth of information. However, it being a really secretive agency.
I mean, just for clarification, it is one of the most secretive of the secretive agencies,
we
correct?
wrote half the first season before we ever had a technical advisor, and we were trying to glean as much as we could from, the few books that have been written about it. But when you start really sort of delving into the day-to-day operations of how these WITSEC inspectors function, it's sort of a half-assed way to go about it if you don't really know. And we had sort of made up our mind. He said, well, you know what? No one's going to talk to us. The Marshal Service wouldn't talk to us. We were getting no official help from anyone. We said, nobody knows what it really is except for the people that are in the program, and they're not going to come out and
right.
say, no, that's not right. So we started just sort of making it up as we went along, and then through the persistence of my assistant at the time, Jessica Butler, who then second season became one of the writers on the show, she sort of doggedly pursued and harassed the Marshal Service, and they sent us Charlie. So he became our technical advisor and corrected the mistakes that we had made. We hadn't shot anything yet, so he came in and helped us in that respect. But it was all with a caveat, because of the way they operate and what they do is so secretive that sometimes we'll ask him a question and he'll, he won't answer.
Right.
He'll go, I don't know, what do you think?
Right.
Or go, oh, that sounds like a good idea. That's close enough. And as we've gone through, and I've gotten much better at kind of the things that I don't know, at guessing, because when you start getting enough pieces of the puzzle, you can sort of extrapolate the other things. So now in the second season, a lot of the times I would, put something in a script, and Charlie would come to me and he would say, it would really be great if you could change that, if you could just make it this and not that. And I did. I always did. I did.
I'm
the last
sensing
thing.
I should change it now.
Yeah, and it's not like there was ever any. The Marshal Service has no real authority over us. They can't say, but we value the relationship that we have with them, and and also the work that they do, and we certainly don't want to put anyone's lives in jeopardy. So, we've had to fudge things here and there, just so that we don't compromise what they do, and we've left some things out that that I know about what they do that we'll probably never show on the show.
It's kind of interesting. Recently, I saw an episode where within the episode, you're doing like a new training video for WITSEC.
Oh, yeah.
And your character is the consultant, within the show of doing it right or wrong kind of thing.
Yes.
That's kind of two different realities going on.
Well, and it's even more than that, because before I, in a previous life, I had a production company and did a lot of training films and did a lot of, corporate stuff. So it was an homage to those days as well.
That's funny. Sherry would like to ask, when casting for the show, was there one actor or actress that you knew from the beginning that you wanted, and if so, who was it?
No.
No.
There wasn't. When I wrote the script, I really had, there were, a handful of names floating around in my head. What's her name? From My Cousin Vinny. She won an Academy Award.
Marissa Tomei.
Marissa Tomei. And I thought, oh, she would be a good Mary, but she was tied up with something else, wasn't available, never even pursued it. The network floated some ideas for, quote unquote, A-list actresses, some of whom, might have been okay. Some I kind of dinged right away and said no. But my wife read the script, even before it was picked up by anyone, and she said, oh, who would be great for this? Mary McCormick. And I didn't know who she was. Wow. I said, my response was, what's she done since Dances with Wolves? So that would be Mary McDonnell.
Right.
So I'm a little bit of an idiot in that respect. I can never remember anyone's names. So we went through an extensive casting process. Mary actually came in to meet with us very late in the process, and by that time I had I knew her, of course, from Private Parts and then The West Wing and everything. And I knew who she was. And she came in. She walked into the room, and I did not write anything for her. She walked in and she sort of was the character.
I want to ask you about one of your quotes that I have here, because I was doing some research into the casting, and this is something I read from a prior interview. In every instance, there were other people who came in who on the surface of it might have been better choices, but in each case there was something about each one of these actors that brought something to the part, and it was impossible not to cast them. So what did you mean on the surface, better choices?
Probably more kind of conventional TV, either people that America already knew, that they might be inclined to tune in, at least once to see, because they were somebody that had come off another show and, already had some degree of celebrity. Or perhaps just kind of fit the trope of the marshal or the boss or the mom or the sister, the floozy sister. I think Nicole is a great example of you know, and one of the I'm really proud of the entire cast. I mean, I think we have a phenomenally talented group of people that are all just so versatile, and you know, it's such an amazing gift to be able to write anything for them. I mean, I can write comedy and they'll knock it out of the park. They can break your heart, you know, and do it all in the same scene. That's a rare talent, and every one of them can do that.
Yeah, I think it makes it. You know, I mean, I think there's the humor comes from great writing sometimes, and it also comes from great characters. And sometimes it's one or the other. Oftentimes it's both.
Right.
And I just want to compliment you because you trusted your instincts, and they're paying big dividends. It's a great critical success. The fans love it. It's doing fantastic.
Yeah, you know, it's very gratifying to
one of the highest rated shows
for the chicken to see the chickens come home to roost. You know, in such a satisfying way.
All right, ratings wise for USA, isn't it one of its better?
Yeah,
shows?
I mean, it's done very well. I think we when we premiered, we were their highest rated premiere since I don't know. I don't pay too much attention to that sort of thing. But you know, and this season we premiered the second season against first run primetime network TV and went up against the the May sweeps network shows, and we held our own. We did very well. So you know, it's very gratifying because we are a quirky show, and you know, and quirky network executives hate the word quirky because you say, you know, and we're not a show. We're a really, really hard show to, you know, in one sentence say what it is.
Right.
And the tendency, you know, is in TV. What's the one sentence? You know, what's the log line? What is it? Tell me. You know, if you can't tell me in one sentence, I'm not interested. And our show is more complex than that. You know, because it's character driven, because it's so much about these people and their lives and the relationships, and you know, and then there is that, you know, the witness protection procedural. And if you know you were pressed to say what it is in one sentence, you'd say it's about a U.S. Marshal attached to the witness protection program in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Right, but you just don't get any of the humor or the quirkiness from that one sentence, you know.
No, you know, it's USA's model for, you know, quote unquote light drama, and that's their phrase, not mine. But they, you know, they have a brand that they have. You know, Bonnie Hammer has meticulously, you know, handcrafted what the network is and what these shows, you know, the mold that they all fit into. And we're really not that. We are a darkly comedic drama, you know. And when we're dramatic, we go to some really, really heavy dramatic places.
One of them, very poignant moment. You know, I've been complimenting you on the comedy, but there is just as much drama. There was the poignant moment with the scene with Martin Landau guest starring when he meets his grandson and daughter-in-law for the first time. Beautiful scene.
Yeah, you know, well, Martin Landau, you know, it's when we got Martin Landau to play the part, that was a huge coup for us because he's brilliant, and you know, when he just came in and brought so much to that part as, you know, as the long past his prime gangster who was one of the first guys to come into the program, and you know, has left his family behind, and you know, and has the moment where he spent all these years thinking that everyone is, you know, his family that he left behind have either completely forgotten him or they hate him for, you know, the rat that he became and for leaving them. And when he comes home, you know, he walks in and you know, there's kind of a shrine to him, and he's come back for his son's funeral. His son, who he left when he was 10, and you know, and the son, you know, died at 49 or something. So
great scene. Anastasia would like to ask, how does writing for children's shows like Rugrats compare to writing for In Plain Sight? So one of your previous credits.
Well, the money's a lot less. They really, it's you know, that was great training to be a writer. That was my first job, which apparently you've done your research. Anastasia. I like that name also, Anastasia. But we had, you know, they were 11-minute scripts, and we had to write 3 acts in 11 minutes. which is a big challenge. And we had to write, obviously our core audience were toddlers and, and up into, I guess, early elementary school age kids. But there was also a lot of what went into those shows that was, directed toward adults. But, the process for that was, it was everything in miniature. Everything happened more quickly as far as the writing process goes. We would break the stories more quickly. We would, I'm trying to think, I wasn't on Rugrats that long. I mean, I think I have my name on maybe a dozen or so episodes, which is an indication of how compressed, things are, at least in terms of the writing of it. I think I was actually on the show for about 6 months, and have my name either as written or co-written on probably about a dozen of those episodes. So you work quickly, which is also good training to be a writer, and and you learn how to throw out the chaff and get to the wheat and try to still be funny, and so.
That reminds me of a question I have. Writers are often taught, trim the fat, edit, cut. So if it doesn't advance the plot, it's wasteful or whatever. So as a writer, how do you do that? It's like dialogue has to either advance the plot, be funny, or is there any room for dialogue that's just funny, that doesn't necessarily, solve the crime or protect the witness or whatever the case may be?
Well, hopefully, and you always try to strike a balance with stuff, and because we're so much of a character-driven show, and all shows overshoot the shows. You wind up with the first cut, and it's however long it is, but they're always long. If they're short, you've got big problems. I think the season finale of season 1, I think the first cut of that was 16, 17 minutes over. It was crazy, and it was great. I mean, we looked at it and said, where the hell are we going to pull 17 minutes out of it? How are we going to do it? But we managed to. So
the rewriting happens in the editing process as
often,
much as yeah.
Often it does, and that was, during the writer's strike, one of the big controversies, one of the, the large, issues, that the Guild was, putting forth the idea that editing is writing. Mm-hmm. Editing in post-production, that is a form of writing. You are, deleting dialogue and moving things around, and I suppose that they, that argument holds some water, but it's not necessarily the domain of the writer. So there's an awful lot of editing that gets done by people who are not writers, right, and are not credited as writers nor paid as writers. So I don't think they can, I don't think it's solid footing, right, really, to say that it's the sole domain of writers. But our show, as far as knowing what to cut, becomes a little more problematic, because often, and I think we went through this, and there was a learning curve, I think, for our editors, because of what you said, and because of how TV is so much drummed into you. Cut the extraneous. If it doesn't move the plot forward, get rid of it. And so I would look at first cuts, and I knew that there were these kind of beautiful character moments that had gone away. And so, for me, the edict was, I want to know where these people live, at least as much, if not more, than where our witness story, than every procedural plot, beat of our witness story. So we, and finding that balance. Obviously, you can't leave big holes in your plot. You have to, you have to tell the story. But you'd be surprised at how much a lot of the stories that are told on TV are overtold. That it's more information than necessary. Which is another, sort of thing that you wrestle with in a TV show, and I think in any form of storytelling, is before you get to the holy crap, he's Kaiser Sose moment, how much of what's happening do you tell your audience? You know, before the holy crap, Bruce Willis is dead. You know, how much of that do you want to, do you want to lay out? And it's, and it's been one of the things that I've wrestled with the network about. You know, for me, I think it's algebra. And as much as you can set it up so that your audience is solving for X, constantly going along, that the more they get to fill in the blanks, the more they will enjoy the process. And the less that I have to, tell them, spoon feed them, what's happening here, why is this going there, and, and people just innately, it's their nature. You want to connect the dots. You want to be, you want to be the one that's like, oh, now I see what is happening. So, and I think the tendency with, with the people on the network side of things is they're, constantly watching the ratings, and are we losing people? Are we losing people? And they're afraid, oh, if it gets too complicated, or if they start to get lost in the plot or don't know what's happening in every second, someone's going to turn off a set. I think there is a point when that becomes true. I think far too often, we don't give our audiences enough credit and because more often than not, they're way ahead of us. I think audiences have become so sophisticated. The conventions of even 20 years ago, have sort of become so arcane, so archaic, that they don't really apply anymore. It's almost impossible to fool audiences anymore.
Yeah, no, they've definitely become a lot more sophisticated. I want to get some more IMs in. Crunchman would like to ask, for In Plain Sight, can you recall any scenes that were particularly hard to shoot?
I can recall many
scenes that were
many. I think in this past season, the scene on the bridge with Clark Peters, where he's that whole segment from the moment Mary Marshall arrive on the bridge and they discover that Norman has kidnapped Carl. What was the character's name? Carl? Yeah. And he's tied him up and he's holding a gun to his head and he's telling him, tell him what you did, or I'll blow your brains out. And and of course, here comes a spoiler. So if you haven't seen the episode, go like this for a minute. Right up to the moment where Norman blows himself and the bridge up. That was a mother to shoot. Can I curse on this show, by the way? Am I allowed to?
We prefer not, but if you did, life would go on.
I'm just curious. I don't need to.
That's right.
But Mary and I have our constant lament to each other in doing this show was, God, I wish we could curse.
Well, I heard one the other night where it was like the guy was working for the guy in the mob, and his wife said, "You're so and so's bitch." Yeah, if you can say bitch on USA, you can say it on the stream.tv.
Oh, we actually, when I wrote the show, we say much more than I thought we could have when we started. I mean, if you're offended by mild cursing, again, do this for a second. But the words that I was sure we would never be able to do, we say goddamn and asshole and dickhead and I mean all that stuff they let us get away with. The ones that the FCC comes in with a fine, we can't do. And those are the ones that that it's hard because Mary's character, in real life, she is as profane as anyone. And we all, she and I both, have professed our hatred for the fake TV curse words, the freaking and frickin' and those things. So I think I've only used those maybe twice in 2 seasons of TV. I had somebody say one of those things.
Bartman would like to ask, how did the crossover between In Plain Sight and Law and Order come about? Great episode there.
Crossover? Was there a crossover?
Was there?
Was there a crossover between? Oh, well, we didn't have a crossover on In Plain Sight, but there was a Law and Order CI, I think. I think it was Law and Order CI. Yeah, because it was Chris Noth, right? And that was CI, I think. Anyway.
So yeah.
Where it was like the last scene, and they had figured out that somebody that they were going after was in witness protection, and so Mary had like a one scene thing toward the end of the Law and Order episode, where she was the WITSEC inspector
Gotcha.
in New York, and and was there to confirm to the NYPD that yeah, this guy was in the program, but he went in the wind. I don't know, a few
So now
years ago.
that bridge blow-up scene, was it the effects that were difficult? Did it take a lot of time to shoot, or what was it specifically?
A lot. We had these flash cannons all over the bridge, all kinds of pyrotechnics. The bridge was wired not to blow, but for these spectacular pyrotechnics, and so we had fire trucks all around. It was in a very dry riverbed. The bridge that we were on was an old bridge with a wooden superstructure underneath that we had to be careful about. So there was a ton of technical prep that went into getting ready for all of that. When it came to shooting the scene, I had rewritten Clark's speech that he makes to the camera. I had rewritten that like the night before they were shooting it. So he had a lot to learn, and so I think that there was a lot of somebody sitting there kind of helping him with the lines as they were going along. But more than that, the worst part of it was I think the temperature was down in the teens that night, and it was a long night, and they were. Whatever the opposite of chasing the light was, the sun was coming up when they actually got the explosion at the end of it all, and came this close to not getting it. And what happened was we had these water trucks standing by in case something went wrong to put out the fire, and because they'd been sitting there all night long, from the time the sun went down until 5 or 6 in the morning, they froze. And they weren't going to work. and I don't know who had the balls to make the choice, said, go ahead, shoot it, blow it up anyway, we got to do it, or we're going to, and it was a really expensive, gag to pull off. So it was, that was probably the most difficult, and I say that having not been there. I was in Los Angeles when they did it, and they shot it in Albuquerque. So I was getting calls from people and texts all night long, just we're dying, and everybody, the actors were, were. So after that, I promised to not put them in any more bridges. In the middle of the night, at least Albuquerque in the winter gets pretty cold.
That's not making conversation. That was a challenging scene.
That was a really challenging scene, yeah.
Alpha would like to ask Mr. Maples, what were some of the more difficult episodes to write, either from a moral or logistical standpoint, and incorporate that in that answer, if you will, the writing process. How many writers on an episode? Who has final say?
Okay, well, starting with your part of it, we've had from time to time, we've gone anywhere from having 3 people, including myself, to I think as many as 8, including myself.
Now compare that just for a quick second to, let's say, Home Improvement, which you worked on. How many staff writers and writers on that?
Home Improvement was, we had a full room of people most of the time. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to remember what sitting in the room. Home Improvement probably had 10 or 12 writers on it.
Okay.
Sitcom is a whole other process, and you're writing a half-hour, comedy play every week. So, you need that many people because people are constantly going off and writing, fixing scenes and doing this and doing that. So it's. So in 1 hour, 1 hour is a little different, and from show to show it can vary wildly, as to how they operate. So that's, that as far as that goes.
Okay.
As far as, let me see.
He moved that away. The question was,
what were the more challenging episodes?
From a moral or logistical point of view.
Well, they're all. It's a really hard show to write, deceptively hard. I mean, on the surface, it seems like kind of You wouldn't think it's as difficult as it is, but because we don't start with a crime every week, we don't start with a dead body every week. I've joked in other interviews, the next show I do, not only are we going to start with a dead body every week, it's going to be the same body. You know, I'm not going to put myself through this kind of hell anymore. You know, the episode that I just referenced before, the Bridge Too Far, went back and forth a lot, and the network really did not want him to blow himself up. You know, they you know, I was getting calls on a regular basis. You know, we really don't want him to die. Please don't make him die. You know, can't Mary or Fred or Marshall drag him off the bridge? And I, you know, that was one where I did prevail. But because the witness protection, there's so much moral ambiguity in witness protection, you know, just on the face of it, just the notion that they take criminals, give them new identities, and place them in with the general population as you know, with fake histories, and hopefully they will live you know, follow the straight and narrow and do well. But it's a bit of a crapshoot. You know, a lot of these guys are career criminals, and you know, and Marshall's Service says their recidivism rate is something along the lines of 17%, which is much lower than the prison system can claim. And I have no reason to, you know, to doubt them.
So 17% who are in the witness protection program wind up going
of the
back,
criminals who wind up, you know,
going back,
stumbling over their own, you know, just they are what they are,
right,
and
right.
You know, the Henry Hills and the Sam Gravanos, you know, who that's all they know. That's what they do. So you know, just because of that, there is a lot of moral questions that come up in the process, you know, about who these people are. Do they, you know, are they redeemed or redeemable or not? So we struggle with it. I'm trying to think about.
So the challenges in how you represent all that.
Yeah, you know, and
fairly, you know.
Yes, and going back to, you know, one of the earlier questions and trying to find the twist on it, and trying to, you know, not always have it be the, you know, the happy fun sunshine hour. So where everything works out. We you know, really try to not do that. You know, so the episodes, we go through so many, you know, incarnations of every story, and like I had said before, you know, we almost always start with a cliche. It's, you know, it's some version of whatever the story is that we've seen before, and then we say, okay, you know, first of all, where's the witness protection aspect in this? One of the questions that, you know, is sort of singular to our show is, where is the Mary of all of this? How does this pertain to her life, and how does it inform, or how does her life inform what's going on? And, you know, and then how do we stand it all on its head? How do we you know, approach it and execute it in a way that is surprising, that is not what we have seen before?
So then you come up with that, and you sign off on it, and then the network also has to sign off on it. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's a, you know, and it's a back and forth process. Well, you know, we'll come up with the pitch, as it were. Right. Sometimes, like in the case of the bridge episode, or we did another episode that was a collapsed building, which was another, you know, big, huge gag. I would call and pitch it in 1 or 2 sentences because I knew it was going to be expensive, and I'd call a line producer and say, is there any way in hell we can do this? You know, and once I get a yes, but it's going to cost money, we're going to need help from our, you know, our network friends, because we will be over budget. And then I'll call and say, okay, here's the one line in the episode. Can I get some more money from you so that we can do it? And you know, they in both instances they said yes. Without
specifics, budget-wise, how do you run compared to networks? Similar, a lot less?
Less, considerably less.
Considerably less?
Yeah, I would say we are, from a network show, we're probably half to a third less than most network shows, and we do it in 7 days, and most network shows, you know, are a minimum of 8, and some are 9 or 10. So.
Last instant message from the night from Website Guy. All the episodes written before the season. Are all of the episodes written before the season starts, or do you write them as you go along?
A little bit of both. The first season, we wrote, I think we had 6 or 7 of the 11 that we did the first season completely written, and then there were production rewrites once we started shooting them. There always are. There's, constantly adjusting to accommodate whatever production obstacles we face as we go along. But the first season we had somewhere between 6 to 8 of the 11 already written before we started. Second season, much more difficult. We had 16 episodes was the order. We had less time before production started. So we had, I think, 6 written, but we had 10 to do. And once we started production, which, and then the network threw out our season premiere episode, I think 3 or 4 days before we were supposed to start prep on the network. On the season 2 premiere, which completely threw us into chaos, and and it was something we were chasing for the rest of the season, trying to make that up. But it becomes really just a mind-boggling, just the amount of work involved in. I was working 20-hour days, 7 days a week. I mean, that's without exaggerating. I would get up at 5 in the morning and start writing and get my kids off to school, and then I'd go to work, and I'd work until 6 or 7 or whenever the rest of the writers went home. And and I think at one point during the season I figured out I had, between breaking stories and editing, I was dealing with some aspect of 11 shows at the same time.
Wow.
So, that season 2 was a bitch, if I could say that. And you get through it and you go, whew, man, how did I do that?
And now you have 2 episodes left in season 2, and then congratulations on, I heard there's going to be a season 3. Wonderful news, and it's very exciting.
There is a season 3. Yeah, well, we have, I'm trying to think what episode is airing. Okay, if you say it's 2, I'll go along with you.
I think the 16th is, I think August 16th is the finale, so I think there's 1 episode this week, and is that right? Maybe 1 episode?
Yeah, maybe. I to be honest with you, I kind of don't know where we are in airing them. By the time they get to air, I've seen them 100 times.
Right.
I've gone through the whole edit process, the shooting, the editing, the writing. So they're on my TiVo. I haven't necessarily seen them all as they've been broadcast.
Well, I will say to the audience, if you haven't seen the show yet, you can go to the USA website. You can watch 3 or 4 of them online there. If you're a digital cable subscriber, you might be able to watch a few episodes on demand. It's a great show in terms of being able to jump in the middle. It's okay. You can catch up. It works. Each episode is kind of self-contained that way. And I would encourage everyone to check them out.
There is a mythology. There is a Mary's Family, and
yes.
We started season 1 with Jinx and Brandy and and all of that, and the bag of drugs, and and that there's a little bit of the mythology that will be helpful, but the episodes where we need to we usually have a previously on to start the episode. So yeah.
Yeah, and you can check out the season 1. I think it's on DVD. If not already, it will be shortly. David?
It is out. Came out.
There
Season
you
1.
go. Fair enough. Thank you so much for coming in. I'm so glad I had an opportunity to become a big fan of the show now and watch it from here on out, and continued success in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you one and all for tuning in, and look forward to seeing you next time on Filmnut, which might be sooner than you think.
Thank you very much. Thanks.